Okay, I can just close the door. All righty.
Okay, so Rachel, you have experience, you're a dating coach, and you have personal experience in the Shidduch world yourself. So before we get to the questions that everyone had sent in, can you give us a little bit of an introduction, who you are, what your experiences are, so people understand, where you're coming from? You're like the best person to probably give us this guidance.
Okay, well, first of all, nice to meet all of you via Zoom. Thank you for having me. Thank you for coming. And I wanted to just start by I'll just give you a little background, my background story. I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut. I moved to New York because there were no really appropriate high schools for me when I was entering high school. Okay,
No.
please mute yourself so that we could.
Adina.
If everyone can please put your phone on mute.
Aya, who's going to be asking the questions, and everyone else can mute yourself, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, great. So I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut. As I said, I lived in New York because there really were not appropriate high schools at the time in New Haven. I grew up, spent about 20 years in New York. Went to seminary, came back, but predominantly spent most of my years growing up in Brooklyn, in Flatbush. And then I was dating. I started dating when I was about 19. I got married at 34, so I was dating for about 14 years. And it was a very challenging journey. I dated hundreds of guys, went on thousands of dates, had been engaged multiple times. And there were some very low points and some very high points. And after I got married, which was not a simple thing, let me tell you, it wasn't like I just met Prince Charming and just rode off my white horse. So after I got married, my phone continued to ring from people who wanted to ask me questions about kind of how to get there, how to do it. And it got so overwhelming that I ended up opening up what is known today as Date Great, which is dating coaching. So that's a small synopsis of my background. I do also want to just add a little bit about my story in terms of my husband and my story, just because for a lot of people it is inspiring, and if it's not inspiring to you, that's fine. My husband had been married at the age of 23. He was married to a woman who was physically not well. As soon as Sheva Brachos hit, they were already in hospital with her, and she was not well. He lived with her for 11 years, and she could not have children because she was very dependent on a lot of very heavy medication in order to keep her alive. So they were never able to have children, and she passed away when she was 31, and I was the first girl that he met after she passed away. So like he says, he came as fast as he could. So I had been dating for 14 years, single, wondering where in the world is he? Why can't the right guy show up? What's wrong with me? Why is it that like I'm always getting set up with the wrong guys, or I go out with the right guys that I like, they don't like me, and somehow it's just never working out. And when Hashem decided that it was supposed to happen, it just did. And Baruch Hashem, we are married, and we have 2 children, a little boy and a little girl. So that is my story. And now I want to turn over to Chaya to start, with some of the questions that we have.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So the first thing that I would like to start off with is, what is your thoughts on speed dating events, the single events, whether it's speed dating or mingling? And if your view is that that you like it, how do we approach it, or how does a single approach it that they actually get a date out of it, as opposed to going there and then leaving not feeling so good because they may not have met their match there or made any connections with a guy?
Okay, so let's talk about a few things. A few things that are really important is we all need to do hishtadlus. And we all realize we have to do hishtadlus. But just because we do hishtadlus doesn't mean that the right guy or girl are going to come from that hishtadlus. So, I tell people you can choose the types of hishtadlus that you feel most comfortable with. You don't have to do everything, but you cannot do nothing. So for instance, if singles events are so painful for you and you find that you don't present as your best self, and you really think that maybe you're giving yourself a bad reputation by going because you just go and sit in the corner and don't talk to anyone, then don't go. Don't go to advertise yourself poorly. If you're a very big social butterfly, you love getting all dressed up, you love meeting a lot of people, and you feel like even if you're not the best at singles events, that you're pretty good, then go and put your best foot forward. But here's the thing, a few things to keep in mind. A, don't give yourself such high expectations, because then you're just going to set yourself up for disaster. That's one. Number two, you need to check your pain at the door. We've all had bad experiences. We're all single. We've all been through a lot. Don't come in with your suitcases of emotional baggage, dump them at the door and be like, no one's going to like me. No one's going to want me. Every guy who sees me thinks I'm too skinny, I'm too tall, I'm too short, I'm too fat. If you're going to go in with that attitude, you're not going to accomplish anything. Number 3 is put your best foot forward. It's not only about meeting the guys. Sometimes it's about meeting the people who are organizing it. Maybe the shadchanim that are there. You know, and if you come out of the event with 1 or 2 names that you'd like to follow up with, consider yourself doing well. We're not trying to get a date with 10 guys here. That's not really a very practical option. You'll be much more focused and better off if you leave yourself a goal of 1 or 2. Something else you can do is you can also, before the event starts, you can call the organizers and say, this is the kind of girl I am, I'm sending you my resume. Are there any names you think I should keep in mind that you think might be more appropriate for me that I should kind of keep a lookout for? That might help you in terms of being more focused when you actually get there, and that will be definitely give you like a little bit of a step up. And if you leave the event and you have a pleasant time, or even if you don't have a pleasant time, move on. It's okay. It was one. So I do hear a lot of background noise. I'm not sure if people are not.
Yeah, if somebody could mute their phone if they're not muted.
That would be great.
There are 2 phone calls that are not muted. If you could just check so we can move on and have the recording clear.
Thank you. So, okay, so you're going to mute? Thank you. So, you know, it's important to know that, yes, it's true. We're going to put our effort and we're going to put a shallus into going out to these events, and it takes a lot of emotional energy and time and putting yourself together and all of that. And if something comes of it, that's great. And if not, you had a nice evening, or even if you didn't have a nice evening, move on. We're going to move on to the next opportunity, whether or not that's a Shabbos meal at someone's house, a guy that someone's suggesting, a dating website, whatever it is. So know yourself, know what you can handle, and if it doesn't work out, move forward. Now, I will tell you that a lot of the questions that are going to be asked tonight are questions that I have written articles for through DateGrade. So I write a dating column for the local paper here in town. I live in Silver Spring, Maryland. And I write a dating column in the Kol Bureau paper here, which comes out every 2 weeks. And a lot of these questions have been addressed in great detail on my blog, on my website, which is dategrade.com, D as in date, 8 as in the number 8, G as in girl, R as in Rachel, 8, the number 8.com. And you can go to the blog and read the articles. Better yet, you can even sign up for the newsletter, which is a free newsletter, comes out every 2 weeks. And you'll get a DateGrade article for free dating tips in your, email inbox. But a lot of these topics have been covered in grave detail through a lot of these articles. I don't want to spend an enormous amount of time on each topic because we have a lot of questions, and I want to be able to cover as much ground as we have for the time that we have. So. Okay. Unless there's anything else, I'm going to move on to the next question. Is that all right?
So let me just ask you one quick question. At a dating event, do you wait for the guy to approach you? Do you approach the guy? What's the right way to do that?
Okay. So this is a big topic. Again, all of the things that I'm going to discuss are my personal approach. If you have an approach that works differently or better for you, feel free to do that. What I really encourage is that people do something called playing the rules. If you haven't read the book, buy it, get it. It's called The Rules. I could look up the actual author for you. You can get it on Amazon very easily.
I have the author. It's by Ellen Fein?
Yes.
F-E-I-N, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And the premise is that, and I'm not going to go through the entire book, but the premise is that you are a spectacular woman like no other. You have so much to offer. You are intelligent. You are beautiful. You are smart. You have so many great qualities that a guy should want. If a guy wants you, let him chase you, because that is going to be the healthy way to do it. Letting him chase you means do not, run after him at an event. Don't get 20 shots on him to run after him because he's just going to get annoyed and walk away. Learn the art of playing a little bit hard to get. Be careful not to play the game too hard, because if you do, then you will be deemed too hard to get and he won't try anymore. So be careful how you do that. But definitely, when you're in an event, if a guy approaches you, that's great. Guess what? It shows he's interested. If you happen to casually be hanging around the dessert table where he's standing and you make yourself visually known and he picks up on it and he wants to talk to you, that's great. If he's not coming over to talk to you, take it as a sign he does not want to talk to you. And you shouldn't be insulted, because what you should be doing is moving on. Nobody needs to go where they're not wanted. We need to focus on going where we are respected, appreciated, liked, where we're wanted. We want to marry someone who wants what we have to offer. We don't want to force feed someone what we have to offer. It won't taste good in the long run. So when it comes to singles events, I would not chase guys. If there's a guy you're interested in, I know this was a question. If there's a guy you're interested in, try to make yourself within his visual path, whether or not you walk next to his table, whether or not you join a conversation, whether or not you happen to be talking to someone else that he's talking nearby to, or speak to the shadchanim and organizers at the event and say, you know, that guy over there, I was wondering if you could make an introduction or if you could maybe suggest me to him. But, and this is the main point, don't say that I said that. Make it sound like it's coming from you so that it's more natural and it still continues that flow of like the guy pursues the girl. Now, the reason why this pattern is very important, it's a longer conversation, but just in short, the reason why this pattern is important is because when a man pursues a woman and he finally gets the girl that he always wanted, he'll spend the rest of his life making her extremely happy because this is the woman of his dreams. And in turn, she will be a very happy wife because he will always be, you know, trying to make her happy. But woman pursues a man, she might get him and they might get married, but the dynamic that was created is that she has to constantly pursue him and she has to constantly run after him, engage him, and it's not comfortable for her in the long run because ultimately men like to pursue and women like to be pursued. So that's what a little bit of this book is about. For a lot more detail, you should read the book. Keep in mind, it's not a frum book, so obviously you need to weed out the non-frum pieces and translate it into the frum world. And be careful that with today's men, some of them are more insecure and less confident and don't have the confidence in order to play the game as hard as the book might say. But, you know, if a guy texts you, you don't have to text him right away as, you know, and answer every single text. If he calls you, you don't have to call him back right away and answer every single phone call. A little soft game of hard to get is not a bad thing.
And how long do you follow that through? Through the relationship, till after marriage, or it's just while dating?
Well, here's the thing. Obviously, when you're married, you can ease up on it a little bit. But let me tell you, if your husband's at work and you're calling him 24/7 and nagging him and annoying him and constantly saying, why aren't you spending time with me? He's going to get nauseous and he's going to get very annoyed. And you don't want to do that. So a healthy game of a little bit of hard to get in marriage is not a bad thing. Shh, don't tell anyone I said.
Okay, thank you.
But there are many other things, like you should always look beautiful for your husband. He doesn't have to watch you put on makeup and find out how you got that way and understands all the intricacies of what you do to get your makeup and your, you know, what do you do to wax. Like, well, it's not necessary for him to know. He should just think you're beautiful. That's it. The details are not his business.
It's magical. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, the next question. So someone goes on a date, it's not a bad date, it's an okay date, they don't really feel one way or the other, and they feel like maybe something might be missing, their spark is not there. How long do you go until you get to the point of a yes or a no?
Okay, good. So there are certain theories about this. I'm going to give you, you know, one of them that is very popular, which does work for some people. You have to understand, for a lot of these answers, not everything is going to work for everybody. And that's why people really need to call me one-on-one to discuss their personal situation. It has to do with your personal personality, the chemistry and dynamic with the person that you're dating, where you're actually holding, what your relationship patterns have been. I mean, there's many different variables. So I would, you know, be careful that you don't just apply everything I say directly, but make sure that you're speaking to someone. It doesn't have to be me, but it should be somebody who's guiding you.
Just take a pause for 1 minute. The people who join on a little later, they're not muted yet. And we can, someone's asking if we could just make sure that we're muted.
Okay, I think
okay.
we're good.
Yes,
thank you. So, you know, you need to speak to someone who can guide you through the personal details of what you're going through. That's definitely going to be important. But with all that said, you know, when you're dating somebody, can you see me?
Yeah, it's clear.
You just black out?
It goes in and out, but you're there for the most part.
Okay, great. So when you're dating somebody, obviously it's important to make sure that what you need in a relationship is there versus what your wants are. So I'm going to define this for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about. Needs are a list of core traits that without them you could not survive a relationship. And it really goes to the core of who you are and what will balance you out in a relationship. You can't live without these needs. You must have those things. Okay, so for an example, it could be honesty, integrity, a certain hashkafic baseline where you cannot go below, emotional connection, a deep emotional connection. You know, you think that these things are basic, but for many people, it's not necessarily a given. Now, wants are a list of things that would be very nice to have. It would really be nice if he was tall. It would really be nice if he came from an awesome, wealthy family. It would be nice if he had, great clothes. But it's not going to make or break your marriage. So if you don't have it, it's not going to be a make it or break it. And the needs are much more of a focus. So you will be very happily married if you have all of your needs and some of your wants. You will definitely struggle if you have all of your wants and you don't have your needs. So when you're dating a guy and you see that a lot of the needs are there, and this is a guy that's like worth sticking around for because he's a real mensch, he's really cute, you love his company, you enjoy talking to him, he's super smart, and he's frum, and he's very passionate about what he does, right? So when you meet a guy like that, if there's no spark, please mute yourself. If you just joined, please just mute yourself. Thank you. So if you meet a guy and he has a lot of those qualities, then he might be worthwhile sticking around for. Now, let me explain to you a few reasons why you should stick around and what might happen. So first of all, a lot of guys and girls, when they've dated for a long time, are scared to open up. And so they won't let that emotional side out because they're scared of getting hurt. So if you're scared of getting hurt and he's scared of getting hurt and both of you are holding back, neither of you are going to feel any spark. Okay, that's A. B, if one person or the other has either gone through a really significant loss, like the loss of a parent or the loss of a sibling or a really, really bad breakup, when a person goes through those types of losses, they start to protect themselves by putting up walls of protection, which doesn't allow them to connect to another. Maybe they've gone through a broken engagement, okay, or maybe even a divorce. So if those walls go up, which they definitely do, the higher you build those walls, the harder they are to come down. Now, it's not to say that they can't come down, but they take time. So if you're dating someone and you say, listen, everything here really could work and really should work, I'm just not feeling a spark, I would encourage you to continue. Now, I really can't say how long you should actually continue because every situation is very different. Maybe you're dating him already for 3 months. Maybe you're dating him 4 dates. Everyone has their own kind of normal. So I don't want to pin that down, for a specific number of dates. But it is something that you should discuss and discuss with a mentor. If you joined recently, just please mute yourself if you can. Thank you.
Does he want?
You might not know. I'll take care of that. Okay, you could go ahead.
Okay. So,
You're on the phone? No.
I can't give you a specific amount of dates or time. That's really something that you need to speak to someone about. But what I would focus on more is making sure that what you need in a relationship works. And if you say everything really should work here, but for some reason it's not, and I'm attracted to him and I like his company, but somehow there's just no spark, I would continue for a little longer to see if we can pull down those emotional walls of protection to allow both of you to open up and to feel more comfortable and see what happens. Now, the worst that's going to happen is you're going to invest in a few more dates. I'm not telling you to do this for another 5 months, but we have to see some seeds. We have to see some signs that things are at least moving forward in a positive direction in order to really continue.
Okay, great. So thank you. Okay, let me get to the next question. Sorry.
Not a problem.
I was working on muting, trying to figure out the mute.
Not a problem.
Okay, so the next question would be how do we prevent burnout if somebody is at that point where they're done? And if they're in burnout, how to get out of that burnout?
Okay, great question. Okay, so burnout is obviously a huge problem, and here's a few things you can do. So, this webinar right now is geared towards about 26 to 35. I don't know exactly what the majority age is, but something that we need to do for ourselves is You need to know yourself and you need to know what you can handle. So for instance, some people feel motivated by constantly going on more and more dates. That makes them feel like I'm moving somewhere, I'm going somewhere, I'm accomplishing something. Even if the dates don't work out, I feel like I always have another date, and that makes me feel like I'm in a forward motion, okay? For some people that works. For other people, it's draining. And it has to do with like where you kind of pull your energy from as a person. Are you more of an extrovert? Are you more of an introvert? So you need to know yourself and what you can handle. And if you're just going out with every guy just because you need to have a date and that works for you, you can do that. It might burn you out, it might not, but you need to know what works for you. But if you're someone who that does not work for, here's a few things that we need to do. You need to write down, sit down with a mentor or a coach and create your list of needs and wants in order that you're not just going out with any guy that comes along, but you're actually going out with guys that make sense for you. Therefore, we're minimizing the amounts of just going out in order to make it focused, which will definitely help us in terms of burnout. That's the first thing. Second thing is that something that I do recommend for my older singles, which you know, I would probably say 28, 29 and up, although you need to make this decision with someone who, maybe a mentor, a Rav, a coach, is what I call just 1 hour coffee. Meaning, I know what I'm looking for, you know what you're looking for. Let's not pretend that we need to spend 5 hours to figure this out. I'll meet you for a cup of coffee. We'll meet at a Starbucks. You know, you can pick me up, you cannot pick me up. And it's 1 hour, which means I tell the shadchan or whoever's in between, 1 hour on the clock. There's no one should take this personally. This is not an insult. But if I have nothing to say to this guy for an hour, I don't know why I'm going to have any more to say in 4 hours. You know, so the hour is to see, like, is this even worth continuing some sort of investment in? I used to do this personally, and it tremendously helped me prevent burnout because every time I thought of a date, if I had to think of going out with him for 4 or 5 hours, I'd be like, no, I'm not going out. But because I was going out for 1 hour, it allowed me to be more open-minded because I was like, okay, an hour, I can handle an hour that I could do. And then I was able to be more open-minded. And to be quite honest, being more open-minded allowed me to date my husband, who I really did not want to date. But
how did you, let me ask you a question. How did you get past your saying to be open-minded? How did you get to that point? How did you know you have to, you know, move over your personal boundaries to be able to go out with him?
My husband, you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I'm glad to share this with you because it's, I don't really usually share all of this, but I think it's very important for this audience. I did not want to go out with my husband at all. He was everything that I needed and nothing that I wanted. And so he had been married before. He had lived in a different city. I was looking for a professional. He was a kiruv rabbi. There were a whole variety of things that I was completely not looking for. In my mind, and we do this all the time, like we hear one thing about somebody and all of a sudden we've like created a whole life story for them even though we don't know them. So in my mind, because he had already buried a wife, I decided he was like, he must be this like old burnt out guy. I mean, he's already like buried a wife. To me, that sounded like an old man, you know? Right. And it couldn't be anything else from the truth. I made it up. It was completely fake. My husband's like a young, energetic, very vivacious personality, physically and emotionally, and I made it up. So we have to be careful the stories that we tell ourselves. We also have to be careful that sometimes we get rid of shidduch, and because we don't really respect or like the person who's mentioning it, we all of a sudden judge the boy by the person who's mentioning it. So if we have a really annoying, yappy neighbor who mentions the guy, all of a sudden the guy is weird and not for us because the neighbor, frankly, is not for us. Right. We have to be really careful because she might actually have a really good guy for you, but because you're annoyed with her and don't really want to work with her, you've nixed the guy. So better do your research, and if you want to nix the guy, look into it, you know, and see if it's actually an option or not, then just nix the random neighbor who is annoying. You know what I'm saying? So I did not want to go out with my husband. And the only reason why I did go out with my husband is because someone who I deeply respected, who, you know, knew my husband, basically gave my husband a yes without my permission.
Oh.
He said,
what was your response to that?
Hang out with you. And he called me up and he's like, you have a date. And I said, no, I don't want to go out with you. He's like, you don't have a choice. You already have a date. Now, that was not very appropriate. I wouldn't recommend that people do this. But I trusted this person a lot, and I had a lot of respect for them that I really wasn't going to say no. And I told them, you know, I'll do a 1 hour coffee. And they're like, absolutely not. This guy deserves a real date. You're going to go on a real date. And when I went into the date, I was, and this is just to learn from, I was so upset at this person for like literally bait and switch, like just, I felt bullying me into this date that I decided this guy is not for me, and I'm going to show him. I am going to shut off. I am not going to be present. I am not going to be interested, and this date is going to be over as fast as I possibly can get out of it. Okay. And that's what I did. I kind of went into the date being like, yeah, hi, my name is Rachel. Okay, I'm this over. And it's a good thing that my husband was patient because otherwise I wouldn't be here today. So, you know, just be careful that we don't throw good guys away, because a lot of times we throw good guys away for very, very poor reasons. And we say yes to guys for poor reasons too. And if I would have been so hasty, I would have said no to my husband, which would have been the tragedy of my life, the tragedy of my life. So that's why it's very helpful to have an outside person kind of talk it through, not because you're not intelligent, not because you don't know yourself, not because you don't know what you're doing and who you are and what you're looking for, but because an objective personality is definitely going to give you a view different than what you might have thought yourself. I had a dating coach. When I was dating, I'm telling you right now, I would never have been married to my husband without it, because I wanted to say no a million times, because I was so stuck on the things that I didn't want that I couldn't embrace and appreciate the things that he actually was, which were my needs. And it was a real mental shift, and it took a lot of time. It was not love at first sight. It was not. There was a lot of chemistry right away, but he was so many things that I did not want that I really, really I fought it for a very long time until I realized that it's just not that it's not good for me. It's just very different than what I would have thought. Now, if you speak to any happily married person, most of them will tell you, my husband's wonderful, they're special, he's great, but this is so different than what I thought. Any girl who gets engaged, I'm sure you've spoken to your friends, it's like, yeah, everything's good, but it's like so different than what I would have thought. Well, here's the reason why, and I'm just going to tangent for a second, because what we want in our head, or what we think we need in our head, is frankly based on fantasy. If you haven't been married before, you don't really know because you haven't been married. So it's very hard. It's like telling a girl exactly, you know, what seminary to go to, or what she should do, you know, when she's in seminary, when she's never even been there. You can't even have the conversation because you haven't actually gone yet. So, you know, fantasy is a place where what we do is we only think about the good things. He should be tall and handsome and smart and intuitive and passionate and frum, and also make time to learn and spend a lot of his time with the family, and also be super laid back. You know, often people are mentioning 5 different personalities to me when they're really looking for one man, and many of those personalities are contradictory to each other. But we really have to make sure that what we're looking for is based in reality. So for instance, when we meet a guy who has many of the things that we're looking for, but he also has some flaws, wait, oh my gosh, I saw some flaws. I don't like that. Wait, so do you mean to tell me that you don't have any flaws? Do you mean to tell me that you don't have anything that's annoying or difficult or challenging that he might have to deal with? Right? So we tend to not think like that. And even though we know people are not perfect, somehow when we meet the imperfection on a date, we're like taken aback. But hello, come on. Anyone who you're close to in your life, your mother, your father, your siblings, your you know, best friend, you think she's amazing and you wouldn't want life without her, but you also know that they have flaws, right? So when we meet this in a date, we're very quick to judge the flaws, even though we know that we have a lot of our own. So I think it's important to look within ourselves and say, hey, you know what? Maybe there's certain things about me that are not so simple or easy to live with. Maybe I'm a neat freak, and that's going to be hard for any guy to live with. Maybe I'm a health nut, and that's going to be hard for any guy to live with, even though I think I live the idyllic life of being neat and organized and health conscious. You know, maybe every guy doesn't want that. And that's, even though he'll live with it, it's not easy for him. Okay.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I hope that gives a little bit of insight. The other thing about burnout is sometimes you need to just take care of yourself. Buy yourself something small, a piece of jewelry, you know, a trip to Israel, a car. Well, that's not so small. But, you know, whatever you feel you need on a reasonable level to make yourself comfortable and perk yourself up. I know that for myself, when I had a very, very difficult breakup, I had to deal with myself that if I go through another big breakup, I would have these like goal prizes that if I have another big breakup, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get, I don't know, a new set of linen. I'm going to get, you know, a new pair of shoes, whatever it is. I used to have these like little gifts I would give myself just to kind of perk myself up to make me feel good if something like that happened. And they really did help short term, not long term, but they did really help. And it's important to take care of yourself, and also keep in mind that marriage is not the only goal in life. Marriage is a beautiful, beautiful institution where you share your life with someone else and you build a life with somebody else, hopefully a good life, a happy life, a harmonious life, and you build a family. But, you know, on a regular day basis, I mean, you know, my husband's working, I'm busy with the kids, he's running to Shachas, Mincha Marav. So it's not like we spend all day, every day together. Yes, we're working towards the same goal to build a home, you know, together, but you need to be happy and comfortable with who you are and realize that if you're not, marriage is not going to solve that. The only thing it's going to solve is that it won't make you single. You'll be married. But if you have a lot of issues that you're struggling with, whether or not it's emotional, psychological, physical, marriage is not going to solve those issues. And a lot of people I find want to get married because they think that when I get married, then everything's going to be great. And you know what? Being married will be great, but the only way it'll be great is if you're a wonderful, happy person and he's a wonderful, happy person, and together you'll make each other even happier. But it's not going to take depressed people and make them happy. It will not. A man cannot do that for you, nor should he. It's not his place, and it's not his responsibility. So if you need friends, you need to go get friends. If you need help emotionally or psychologically, you need to go get that help. He's not going to be able to do that for you. What he can do is he can love you for who you are, and he cannot love you more than you love yourself. I think that's a really important point.
Yeah.
If people do not love themselves, respect themselves, and have their own self-worth, a man cannot give that to you. And I find that to be a big issue with a lot of people that I work with, that they are frustrated that the man that they're dating is not giving them that self-confidence or that self-worth or the love for themselves that they always want to have, but they don't. And so that's personal work you need to do with a coach or a therapist, but not a date or a husband.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. So moving on to a question that kind of follows this one a little bit. So being that there are so many important things to each single when they're dating, how do they know what should they give up on? Because it's not not in the category of a need, but how do they differentiate between a need and a want? What like it's important, do I give up on it or not?
Okay, so you know, making that list of needs and wants is crucial, and people like to tell me, well, I have it in my head, but honestly, having it, you know, concrete on a piece of paper is very important because in our head, we kind of move things around. So for instance, if I'm dating a guy who's a little bit more modern, like, oh, okay, that's all right. But if you look at the paper, it specifically says that X would be my baseline of what hashkafically I could handle on the lowest rung and on the highest rung. And that's important for you to look at because you can change your needs and wants in between guys, but you cannot change your needs and wants during the dating of a guy. That means you're trying to change in order to meet him where he's at or to meet his needs, and that's not accurate. It's only going to come back to, you know, to hurt you. So it's best to really make a concrete list and see, where does this guy fall? Does he actually make sense for the needs that I have on the list? And like I said, the needs are the things that are going to affect the core of a marriage and your actual relationship. Okay. Now, if this guy is what I like to say, worth it. Okay. So you'll hear me say a few things pretty often. Worth it is one of them. If a guy is worth it, like you really like him and you really hit it off and you have so much in common and he's cute and he's smart and he's got a great job and he's super frum, but in a very normal, down to earth kind of way. And you're all thinking like, oh my gosh, could you set me up with it? So I'm making up a theoretical guy. So if you have that and you're thinking, oh, but he lives in, I don't know where, okay, and I don't really want to move. So here's the thing. You have to ask yourself, is he worth it? You're not just going to say pick up and move for a random guy. If you're suggested to a guy, you should look into it. If you see that what you hear from him about him is really amazing, then you should think about going on a date. Now remember, a date means a date, which means a date. It doesn't mean you're marrying the guy. There's no commitment there. So people get nervous to commit to a date when there's one thing that might not be exactly to their liking, but it's a date. And here's the thing, people marry who they like and people marry who they connect with and who they want to spend time with. So even though he might have all the great qualities, but he might live in Montreal and you might not want to live in Montreal, when you meet a guy who has all the needs that you actually need in a relationship, then it might be worth it for you to pick up and consider moving, because we don't get everything. Nobody is perfect. No one comes with a perfect package. And, you know, I experienced it myself, and I also hear from clients all the time. I wish you could just like pull out the parts that I like and then like leave the parts that I don't like. And then I'll just marry those pieces and like put those pieces away. But let me tell you something. The true definition of love is someone who loves and cares about you, all of you, all the parts of you, the good parts, the bad parts, the ugly parts. That's what love is, accepting all of it. And so you're not really ready for marriage if you say that, because when you get married, you realize this person is unbelievable in so many areas, and he has things to work on too. And guess what? So do you, and so do I. And that's how marriage is able to shape us and mold us and help us create something that we could never create individually. The reason why marriage is like the ultimate like mitos machine work is because as much as I would work on myself and as much as my husband will work on himself, the way we are able to work on each other and be a mirror for each other of all the things that we do well and some of the things that we need to work on, there's no work like that work when someone's actually there in a loving and accepting and warm way to point out flaws and say, you know, you might want to be careful about like how you speak. Sometimes I notice that you speak a little Lashon Hara. You probably might not realize it, but I know you don't mean it, but you do it sometimes often. And I just wanted to point it out because I know that you're a person who doesn't want to speak Lashon Hara, but I know that you're also a growing person. So I want to point it out so that, you know, maybe we'll work on it. Maybe we'll work on it together. Maybe we'll start learning something at dinner time to work on it. You know, so
Right.
That's an example of how you can work together on something more than you can work apart. But getting back to the focus, he has to be worth it. Don't just say no for one detail. If everything else sounds good, go on a date, see if you even like him, see if he's worth it. If he's not worth it, then move on. If he is worth it, then we'll have to discuss further how worth it is he. And we don't always get everything. And that might be the one thing that you might have to give up on in order to be with a spectacular person.
Right. Okay, great. Yeah, so earlier you mentioned how girls and guys many times come into the dating with their walls up because whether they have gone through breakups or emotional situations in their life. So the question is, how do you get an emotionally guarded or emotionally closed guy to open up and help a relationship move forward?
Okay, excellent question. Okay, so, you know, at this forum, we're having Chaya Markowitz, who we should really thank Chaya for helping to organize this and put this together and be, you know, our spokesperson here. So thank you, Chaya. But, you know, in the future, I'm also open to doing a Zoom room where everyone's able to kind of put in their input and we can discuss this as long as it doesn't become chaotic.
Yeah, that would be great.
You know, because I'd love to hear other people's feedback as well. But so you have to keep, okay, so this is a big topic. You have to keep in mind a few things. The longer a person dates, just consider dating like different bricks. Every year that you date, you put up a few more bricks, and those bricks are there to protect you, and you put them up in order to protect yourself, but you also keep people out by putting up those walls. So the younger you are, the less bricks you have of that wall, and the older you are, the more bricks. No one's judging, it's just a reality, okay? So if you're talking about someone who's 30 and dating someone 35, or someone who's 35 dating someone 40, it's gonna be harder to pull down those walls because they've gotta come down brick by brick, and this is the way to do it. Do not tell somebody, why don't you open up and just share with me your deepest and darkest feelings? No, that will not do it, okay? Bringing up the conversation is not going to do anything. If you really like this guy and you think that he has a lot of great qualities and you think you have a lot in common, a lot of needs and wants, a lot of goals and values, you know, so what you need to do is be patient, and you need to show that I like you and I'm going to invest in at least a short amount of time to be here and not go anywhere because I think you're worth it and I want to see where this can go. And so it might mean that you might have to invest or sacrifice 3, 4, 10 dates to see if this guy is going to open up. Now what happens is the more that you're patient and the more you create within him a kind of menuchas hanefesh, where he starts to get calmer and more relaxed because he sees, oh, she really does like me and she is sticking with it and she is continuing to go out with me, then that will create a safety for him and for you. And as he starts to feel more safe and more comfortable, slowly those bricks will start to come down and slowly he'll start to share a bit more. Okay.
Right. Okay.
I think that it's really important to keep that in mind. Again, if someone has been hurt profusely, whether or not it's a broken engagement or a family loss or a divorce, okay, so any of those will create a lot of, pain and trauma, and a person needs to ask themselves if they themselves are blocked or if they themselves are holding back from opening up because they're scared to connect, because they're scared of getting hurt. If that's the case, you need to do some of your own work, speak to your own dating coach to figure out what you need to do to bring down those walls and to be able to allow yourself to be more approachable. Sometimes guys are doing great and working hard to open up and the girl's not opening up. You need both, right? It takes two to tango. So we need both to really step in and say, like, I want to make this work. And when two people are scared and nobody wants to go first, then nothing happens, which is why older dating tends to take a lot longer than younger dating. Because when you're younger, it's like, oh, I like him, he's great. I don't have walls, he doesn't have walls, let's get married. When you're older and you've gone through a lot more of life and a lot more pain and more burnt, so you try to protect yourself, and that basically holds things back from moving forward at an earlier pace. It just takes more time. It doesn't mean that it can't happen. I personally feel, and I can say this to this group because it's not a younger on the younger age group. I believe that marriages that happen when they're older are deeper, are more meaningful. The people who are in the marriages have worked on themselves, and when you have two people that have really worked on yourself, it creates a very deep, rich, fulfilling, enjoyable relationship. So I actually think that it's a good thing. It's just that right now we're in panic mode because it's like, where is he, right? But if I told you, don't worry, in 6 months you'll meet him, in a year you'll meet him, then you would calm down and say, oh, this is a good thing, because if I would have had to get married at 19, I would have been such a baby. That could have been such a disaster. So I actually think that it can create a really, really special bond and relationship, aside from the fact that you really do appreciate so much more of what you have when you've waited longer for it, as opposed to just getting it so easily, and that's with anything in life. So I hope that are there any other questions on that topic?
No, that was definitely like a really well spoken. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Okay, so if we move on to another question, from a different point of view, on a date, if there's something about the guy that bothers you, for example, you don't like his voice, you don't like he has a twitch, there's something that irks you at the beginning, you see it through for the first few dates, how long should you go dating this guy until it disappears? And if it doesn't disappear, is that something that will always bother? And is that a deal breaker?
Okay, great. So let's go back. I'm hearing some echoing and all right. Are we all muted? Okay. So let's go back to, the basic needs and wants, right? Is this guy worth it? So yes, his voice may sound very nasally and maybe, he's shorter than you had expected, but does he have a lot of those needs that are really important to you? Great. Does he even have a lot of wants? Because you know what, ladies, you can also expect to get some of the wants. You're probably not going to get all of them, but you probably will get a bunch. Nothing wrong with that, okay? So at the end of the day, it's the same kind of question. Is he worth it? I don't know. That's for you to answer. Now, here's the other thing to keep in mind that we mentioned before. Maybe you have some things that are annoying about you. Maybe you have a twitch, or maybe you have an annoying way of going on and on and on. I mean, here's a few things that I get from guys all the time. She doesn't stop talking, okay? I get this from guys all the time. When she talks, all she does is talk about her friends, and she talks about her clothes, and she talks about, friends and clothes and friends and clothes. And like, if I have to hear one more story about her friends and her clothes, I don't want to hear about it anymore. But she's a great girl, and I wish she would just talk about something else, right? Or girls tend to cut a guy off sometimes when he's speaking because they want to put in their 2 cents. Girls tend to be very late getting ready for a date. These are a few comments that I've gotten from guys in the past, okay? So is it possible to say, wait a minute, maybe there's something about me that's annoying, or maybe there's something about me physically that, I think I'm a beautiful girl, but maybe to him, it's a little bit uncomfortable. He doesn't like redheads, or he doesn't like tall girls, or whatever it is, right? So if everything is worth it, and there's chemistry and connection, and I'm going to review my 3 most important qualities to have when you're dating. If everything is there, then you should keep going. Now, here's what's going to happen. there is no magic trick that happens when you walk down the aisle that all of a sudden those things disappear. It doesn't happen. There's no magic trick that, gets rid of his lisp or gets rid of his crooked teeth. So there's no magic trick that happens. What does happen though is you get to know him more and value him more and not see him only for that. You see him for so many of the other qualities. So for instance, think of a best friend who maybe has, I don't know, bad hair. Okay, she's an amazing person, but she has bad hair. Do you see her as the friend with bad hair? Of course not. You see her as the amazing friend of who she is. I mean, I guess if you really focus on it, you know that she has bad hair, but you don't really think about it because, like, she's your best friend. You don't think about it, okay? So that's what happens. Does it go away? No, it doesn't go away. Other qualities about that person that you really love, respect, appreciate, enjoy, those things kind of rise to the top. Now, you can and most probably will, and if you get married to this person, notice this quality for the rest of your life. And will it potentially bother you? Yes, it could potentially bother you, but that doesn't mean that you won't have a very loving relationship and happy, warm marriage for the rest of your life. Right? So again, maybe he doesn't like the fact that you are 2 or 3 pounds heavier than he might have had in mind. Okay? And then you get married and maybe you put on 2 or 3 more pounds after you have a couple kids. So did it bother him when you dated? Yeah, maybe he didn't say anything to you, but maybe it bothered him. And then did it bother him afterwards when you had kids? Yeah, but he loves you for who you are. So it's important to notice that we also have these things that we need to get over. But again, it comes back to, is he worth it? The longer I get to know him, are things getting better or worse? When I go out with him, do I only see a crooked nose? Do I only see a scratchy voice? Or am I getting to see more of him deeper and deeper and saying, wow, he's such a special person. He's so kind. He's so genuine. He's so passionate. I really respect him. I'm really looking forward to going out again. So as the dates go on, are we getting better and better? And when I say better and better, I don't mean better. I mean, it goes up and down and up and down and up and down. And slowly we're heading in an upward direction, but there are also going to be downs as we go up because that's just life. Often a 3rd, 4th date kind of takes a little dip. These are very normal trends that happen. So keep in mind that those things might not go away. What we're looking for is that you don't just look at him as the guy with the lisp that you can't stand listening to, but you look at him more of who he is and you really appreciate and value that. And then when you get married, it's kind of like the best friend with the bad hair. You notice it technically, but it's not the focus because there's so many more amazing qualities about this person that you really don't focus on it and it doesn't bother you as much. Nobody's perfect. There might always be that quality that kind of irks you a little bit, but bothering you doesn't mean it'll affect your marriage. It means like, yeah, whatever, I would have liked a guy who was taller. Okay, it kind of annoys me. I had in mind like a 6'3" guy. Oh well. Am I not happily married? No, I'm happily married. I just didn't expect to marry a guy who was 5'7", 5'8".
Right. Okay, great. Okay. I think we have time for one more question. So this question is a little bit more, I would guess, a little bit heavier on the side of what we were discussing. When it comes to dating and you get a suggestion if the guy is divorced, first of all, there are plenty great guys that are divorced and they are in the market, on the market in Shidduchim. How do you get a girl, what would you tell a girl to be open to that? And if they are open to that, how do they approach it? Okay, so like with any guy that's being suggested to you, it requires research. And we're not just going to go out with a guy because he's divorced or not because he's divorced. And by the way, just because a guy is divorced doesn't mean he's a great guy. Maybe he is, maybe he's not. It all needs research. Okay, I actually find that going out with a divorced guy, you have an edge up that there's actually someone to ask about how was this guy in marriage? Because when you ask about a single guy, you don't know how he's going to be when he's married. When you ask about a married guy, you could get a little bit of insight from some references as to what kind of father was he? What kind of husband was he? Was he very patient? Was he very, was he very kind? Or was he, selfish? I don't know. But there are things that you can ask. So it needs research like anything else. And I would prefer that we not look at guys as divorced or single because I'm sure this divorced guy
is a whole person behind that word divorce. He's not just
Right.
divorced. He can actually be a wonderful guy. And you know what? If he's so wonderful and he marries you, he won't be divorced anymore. He'll be married to you. So I personally married somebody who had been married previously, and probably would have had kids if, if his wife wasn't sick. He probably would have had at least 4 kids. He was married, for 10, 11 years. He at least would have had 4 or 5 kids. Happens to be that he didn't, but at a certain point, I had to realize, like, why am I looking at this guy as like the widower? Like, why can't I look at him for who he is? And when I started to see him for who he was, and like, this is a situation that happened, it was unfortunate, but hey, it worked. It made him available for me. So that was useful. So a person needs to also know themselves. A person needs to know what they're up to. So if you feel that you're ready for this, you definitely can open yourself up to a huge market of new guys and new names that you might not have considered before. And a person needs to know what they can handle. Could they handle someone with kids? Could they not handle someone with kids? But here's something to keep in mind. What I find in my practice is that a lot of people are what I call missing their window. And what I mean by that is, very often people are open to a new category of guys after that window has already closed. So when you're between the ages of 26 to 30, 32, the dating window for guys who are divorced is very wide open to you. But once you're past 33, 34, definitely 35, you should have been dating these guys already who are divorced. You should be open to them. And if you're not, and you're holding out until you're 40 to date guys who are divorced, then you're going to realize a lot of these good divorced guys are going to come and they're going to go. Because at 40, a lot of the single guys, if they've never been married, they have a lot of issues, and I would definitely be careful and very wary of them. A guy who's 40 and definitely FFB and has never been married, I would definitely be very careful at the issues that they're not married for. Dating for men, I'm not saying about women because it's a different story, but for men, you might not want to quote me saying this, but for many men, it's kind of like the housing market. A really good house goes up on the market, and a really great house gets bought before it even goes on to anyone's listing, because everyone knows this great house is going up. But the house that's been sitting on the market for 10, 15, 20, 30 years and nobody wants to buy it, you're wondering why. What's wrong with the house that nobody wants to buy it? You understand? So you have to be careful that a lot of girls are very stuck on, I'm not going to marry a guy's divorced. I'm not going to marry a guy's divorced. But if you're already 35, 36, and guys are worried about fertility, then marrying a guy who's divorced with kids is the best quality guy that you could potentially get at this stage. I know that it might be hard to hear, but if you don't hear that now, then when you get older and older, that window is going to be closed for you. And I would rather you get the best guy that you can at this age as opposed to waiting too late. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, because I see a lot of girls in their 30s passing up really great divorce guys. Unfortunately, divorce happens for many reasons, many different reasons. There is not one reason. And there are a lot of young, great divorce guys that are around. I could make a great husband for somebody. And a lot of people cannot get over the stigma of the word divorce, that they married a guy who's divorced, and they are passing up really great guys. But like I said, just because he's divorced doesn't mean he's necessarily a great guy. Do your research.
Okay, so about the research, if somebody should decide to go out with a divorced guy, what are they looking for? What should they be asking about? What are the red flags?
Okay, so this is a much longer conversation, but definitely you would like, you're going to hear 2 sides of a story.
Right. So who do you listen to?
Story. But what you need to do is, when you do information, you need to do a lot more information than a regular shidduch. You need to look for a pattern. Look for a pattern that everybody is saying X or everybody is saying Y. Look for a pattern where people are saying, she just was really unhealthy and she decided to go off the derech, and that's why they had to get divorced, not because he was a bad guy. Or was he mean? Was he verbally abusive? People also tend to throw around the word abuse a little too freely, so be careful. You need to do your research and find out what happened there. And you need to do more research, like I said, to look for those patterns. Okay, the patterns are going to be you want to look for more of a majority of people say he was a really good guy, he just wasn't a shidduch.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So I think because we're hitting 10 o'clock, this is probably as much as we would get done today. It was really great.
So a few things. Feel free to check out dategreat.com. Feel free to sign up for the free newsletter. Feel free to submit more questions. Hi, I'm glad to do this, another time, maybe, once every 2 months, if people really would like that. But it's really important that if you need help about your specific situations that you are in, to speak to somebody personally. It does not need to be me. It could be me. You can reach me at Rachel, Rachel @dategreat. But it's really important that you seek the help that you need, because we could be passing up really, really great options of guys. And we can also be saying yes to the wrong guys, right? So ultimately, and I'm going to leave you with this, ultimately, we get the love that we think we deserve. And unfortunately, if that love is a very low level love, we often will attract a very low level love that will treat us not properly. And so we want to make sure that you're getting what I call the highest level love. And sometimes it takes some self-development and self-work to look at yourself and say, how did I grow up? What might be getting in my way of moving forward? What's the kind of relationship I've seen at home that I want to be careful not to re-attract? Okay, because we tend to marry people that are more similar to either a parent, mother, or father, for better and for worse, unfortunately. So be careful. These are things you want to speak out with somebody so that we don't repeat history and keep, unfortunately, having the same mistakes happen over and over and over. And I think that there's an amazing future for everyone here. I believe that anyone who wants to get married can get married if they're willing to be open and flexible and work hard. Relationships are hard work. And I know you hear that from people. Hard work is not bad. Hard work is okay. You work hard at any job, anything you've done in your life that was meaningful or worthwhile, you worked hard at. And so the good news is that it can happen, but it's going to take hard work. And the harder it is, the more meaningful it'll be. So Amir Hashem, I daven for all of you that it should happen at the right time, because the right time is better than just soon. The right time is what we're looking for. And look forward to picking up another time.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty, Chaya. Pleasure.
Good night.
Good night. Take care.